Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority-GPHA Ghana. Now, media partner on this journey of a lifetime is the Business and Financial Times, the BNFT. If you want to have a grasp of all that transpired in the show tonight, make a date and grab the Thursday edition of the BNFT, and you'll be able to see all that transpired here on the show tonight. Along the line, we shall get interactive with you, and you can send your comments and messages ahead via our WhatsApp line, which is 0559-019-177, 0559-019-177. Remember, we shall also activate the phone lines when the time is due for you to call in and share your thoughts on the show tonight. My name is Kennedy Mona. We're going for a quick break. We'll be back shortly.
Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goil Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goil Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goil Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goil Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water, or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Time for us to take a look at some of the stories happening in the port and maritime industry. This took place in the course of the week, and the reconstituted board of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority paid a working visit to the authority. They also took a tour of the port of Tema, plus the fact that the management of Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority also undertook the 2021 Strategic Management Summit in the course of the week. Let's take a look at these stories.
The board chairman of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Isaac Osei, has stated that Ghana's ports are well positioned not only to be the gateway to trade in the sub-region, but also as a transit point for the landlocked countries. Isaac Osei said this when the reconstituted board of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority paid the working visit to the port of Tema.
Tema is uniquely positioned, and I'm very happy that we have also staff who are properly qualified to deliver on the mandates that, we've been given.
He was optimistic that equipment challenges at the ports will be resolved.
Equipment challenges, but I think we agree that we can resolve some of them. Not all of them at a go, but definitely we can resolve some of them. And I think the Director General is very determined on that score.
He said he intends to bring his experience in both the public and private sectors of the economy to bear as he leads the GPHA board. The Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Michael Lugoje, said the Port Authority will continue to provide the needed infrastructure and business environment for trade facilitation and economic development.
We were looking forward to ending the year with container traffic of just about 1 million TEUs. We ended 1.28 million TEUs, which was significant because we never expected, even in a COVID year. Now, this year in particular, looking at January to June, we've ended seeing significant growth of Tema being almost about 39% above budget. We've exceeded budget by 39%.
He revealed that there is a joint effort from stakeholders to ensure that arbitrary charges at the ports are scrapped.
But we are looking at that solution in conjunction with Shippers Authority and then also the Ministry of Transport to see how we can dialogue and try and see which areas this kind of cost can be minimized. But again, apart from just dialogue, there's a need for legislation that can provide the necessary backing to help. And I think Shippers Authority is looking at its law right now.
The GPHA board took a tour of the port of Tema to enable them to have first-hand experience of operations in the port. The board members visited the Marine Section, Golden Jubilee Terminal, Reefer Terminal, and the MPS Terminal 3. The board were later introduced to top management of the authority, followed by an interactive session, which included an orientation on the operations of GPHA. The presentations included an overview of the Port Authority, the status of the authority's finances, and updates on projects capturing old and new projects spanning Tema, Takrade, and Keta. The Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Michael Oguje, has assured the port community and Ghanaians in general of a bright future for the ports of Ghana as management pursues initiatives that would guarantee continued success for the ports. Speaking at this year's GPHA Strategic Management Summit in the outskirts of Accra, he emphasized his optimism for growth while recounting some of the challenges of the past few years.
We weren't very sure. Our last strategic meeting we had was 2019, where we couldn't plan properly because reefer containers were gone, and a number of MPS containers we are handling today, container volume we are handling in Tema today, there was no certainty that we were going to have them. So we couldn't plan for equipment. We couldn't plan for staff. Everything was uncertain at that time.
The strategic management meeting is a major activity the leadership of the authority undertakes to review performance and plan for the future, taking into consideration critical changes in the port business. The GPHA boss said management over the past few years had to work assiduously to enhance capacity and productivity for business continuity. He revealed that as a result of the strong collaboration between management and staff, the authority was able to cut costs and create employment.
And you've seen a strategic decision that we've taken, a major reform never heard of in GPHA history, where we've decided to tackle the problem of overtime. And we tackled it, ensuring that everybody participated in the reasoning behind it, both labor and management. And we've used that savings to also tackle a national crisis, which is unemployment.
Michael Oguje assured clients of the port of improved efficiency through key strategic reforms, as well as tightened collaborations with stakeholders.
We heard about the issue about scheduling. While reefer clearing agents only come in the evenings. So there is scheduling that is going to be done. But that scheduling is not going to be dictated by Tema Port to the freight forwarders. They are going to be engaged before the scheduling will be done, so that you know that you must come in the morning, you must come in the afternoon, you must come in the evening. By so doing, you are part of the decision making, and then you go by it, and then there won't be this crumbling in the evenings where, people keep complaining, we are there, you cannot serve us and all that.
All right, so those were some local stories in the port and maritime industry. It's time for us to go on to the global stage and see what's happening in the industry.
Just over a week after announcing that it would begin a rolling job action across Australia's ports, the Maritime Union of Australia agreed to suspend the action at the Port of Melbourne. The decision to stop the strike came after as many as a third of the workers at one of the port's terminals were forced into isolation due to 2 cases of COVID-19. Sales of tankers for demolition reached a 39-month high during September, yet with the sector notorious for holding on to tonnage and oil prices on the rise, the long-expected rebalancing of supply and demand among the tanker operations appears still to be delayed. Industry trade group BIMCO reports that a total of 1.9 million deadweight tonnage of capacity was removed in September from the tanker sector. This compares with sales of just a total of 2.2 million deadweight tonnage of capacity scrapped in the prior 8 months of 2021. Damen Group has completed construction and sea trials on the first of a new generation crude transfer vessel, and it is preparing to undergo final outfitting before it undertakes proof of concept trials in the North Sea. The vessel combines features of speed and larger passenger capacity, along with elements to enhance comfort, which Damen says creates a compelling new business case for both the oil and gas sector and the emerging offshore wind industry.
It's time for the Goil TV Market, and this week's edition of the Goil TV Market comes from the Sunyani Market. Remember, the Goil TV Market is all about showcasing the services and products of one of our lead sponsors, Goil Company Limited.
Goil, in the service of the nation.
Sunyani Kasano, your stations, Marco Enum, Sana. Ofa doma kwanso ebi ho brekum ebi ho tachima kwanso kumasi kwanso ye obebre eja mo anya ni mudida enti ye woni pa mo no se ye mo beche na mo ti ase na mo se ne ye niema ye ton no esitie
oba ye station a services are you provide ye ton petrol diesel pese wo ye service so a akwanya so ye den e wo ho so ba ye be change oil amount na metimi edi adanse ye adwuma yi ya check akra e ba petrol dwuma die a I say, "Untimi nsago who de biara da."
So nsuo wa woka nim na se ema woka no emututwe na entumi police na say puli na wo togo fuel a sa problem no ebeja eno no ndanchen no ye say se woka no epun wusie a etumi ema ne brase wusie na efi woka ni meba no wo togo diesel a e solve sa problem no ma
ye diesel no enesi ho no aha kakra me kafa diesel ho ne say ai hia e ma wo say wo ka na ebe chama e sulphur oba Ghana ha ye sulphur no de agitum no e 50 ppm no product a ekọ ebinum station ni ade no e as high as 1500 ppm ukota na esie nie esan say e high sulphur nti no bibi wo engine block my friend lining ese no e ni free ho cause afu e wuta engine block no unim ne inside ne ye white smooth eti e be ma engine ayede ache petrol na ho de ne wasoro papa no 95 aduakron nan eni num eti enum ne na ye de wasoro pa well ni ayeton aduakron num no ye nton bibia ka aduakron num no ho de na ho de no ayede wasoro pa no eti mo ne gwal endidwa na gwal de ye mamo adepa na me ka tira mo say ye fuwa no sane station bia obeko bia eno abi na ye den ye ton no wo ho
gwal enye petrol ni diesel kwani se mi car na we use engine oil we use radiator coolant but we use ATF I follow automatic transmission ni na bi ha for instance oba Ghana ha and I'm say temperature no was smooth no your engine oil I use a say the enu ba say kra e be yadu ana say awia hye kra e be yadu enti e ma ye no say o say mamu oil a e betimi abo yen weda na uhwemu a ta bia no say ye ka ke say ana ketua your two systems ye the issue sparks enu ya na petrol car enti uhwe petrol car bia we use spark plugs as always diesel cars are issue compression enu nti no ya cha oil no such a way say oil bia betimi afa car bia na so obi ahoden wo spark car e check crank car enti uhwe we ho a API level wo SF/CD SF which say a spark but the level no edu F the additives like can ho a ama edu F level so we stroke CD no just say we ti da ma crank cars and as a combat event say compressor cars but enu no level no di it just say petrol no diesel no motor HD no we ti da ma super we ti da ma diesel car enti bia wo na mpo na we diesel oil no sorry eso ati na wuntimi mfa nko na usia bia we ti bi egu enti wo fa nse stop measure we be do bia we be nya de wa open no a wa to bi sana ndi o hidi benzitie
meni gola ya adwuma beblebe manya mfa so afiri so me sram me nua no mo amwa me kan fo gola mamo me amwe me ya adwuma firi sankwale basunwan sankwale tukumase gola an ma yuso o mu diesel no mo petrol mo hu fa so mo wo
boy fuel de metima di ho adanse say e fuel papa e fuel de gu car mu a e boa wo ma o car no engine run na ade ba ko e wo go efu ma mani je ho se so obi obi go efu obi abedi ho adanse a so you go efu a na se enyunu jo a engine sound kra e ba form to the latter part no say fuel like unya engine sound at the form ankasa the problem be about engine no what me detect who say problem be about car engine nti go efu de am say anka no kra e efu a me de ho adanse ma driver ni bia say ko bia betimi a anka go efu e no mo bia anya dai enyusu.
North, south, east and west, we always stand for the best.
All right, so that was the Goil TV market, which came to you from the Sunyani market in the Bono region. Now, tonight we are talking sustainable shipping. What is sustainable shipping? And we all know that globally it's the International Maritime Organization, an organ of the United Nations that's responsible for regulating the shipping industry. Now, in recent times, focus have shifted and premium is placed on how to get people to practice safe and sustainable shipping. Issues of carbon emissions, issues of pollution and all that, and how to get people to go green and to ensure that our shipping industry is sustained. That's what we're looking at tonight. And we have the privilege of having in our studios tonight Captain Inusa Abdul Nasir. Captain Inusa Abdul Nasir is the director in charge of the Technical Services Division at the Ghana Maritime Authority. Good evening, sir, Captain.
Good evening, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed for obliging us. Let me begin with a very basic question. What is sustainable shipping?
May I take this opportunity to thank your viewers and then tuning into this very important topic.
Absolutely.
Which is, a unique topic, yeah. Sustainable shipping, as we all know, first of all, I'd like to talk about shipping. Shipping is a seaborne trade whereby ships carry huge cargoes, raw materials, and any kind of services that are bulky from an origin to a long-distance destination. So shipping is the transport of cargo from one point to another, and they normally are engaged in long-distance or what we call long voyages. So when you talk about sustainable shipping, like green shipping, it's about applying the concept of sustainable development into shipping and taking into consideration the environment and socio-economic development. And sustainable shipping is key in keeping the environment clean and ensuring that these long voyages are continuously going on and the provision of the goods and services for human consumption is pertinent. So this is what we call sustainable shipping. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. I know the IMO, which is responsible for regulating the shipping industry globally, in recent times have been trumpeting the issue of carbon emissions and how to get it reduced in our waters, in waters across the globe. So I just want to find out from you how far they have come and whether you can throw more light on this particular initiative.
Very well. The issue of carbon emissions is triggered by the concept of this climate change, which is ongoing. And I think it all started by the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, particularly SDG 13.
SDG
13,
13, okay, yeah.
Which calls on everyone to take urgent action to combat the issues of climate change and its impacts. So it is based on this that the IMO has taken bold steps to execute this kind of procedures. But the first thing I would want to tell you is that, and all the viewers, there has been a lot of emissions of air pollutants, including the greenhouse gases, from shipping, and which continuously leads to climate change issues, as well as environment pollution problems.
Right.
So based on that, the IMO has taken steps in responding to the SDGs, as I mentioned earlier, to put in place, particularly into shipping. But before then, it is very important to note that without shipping, actually there cannot be economic development globally. So shipping is very important, and the way the shipping is conducted globally, it's an international, project. It's an international industry.
Absolutely.
And shipping, as we have been informed, transports about 80% of global trade by volume, and 70% of global trade by value along the whole. So it's an international industry. And I would like to say that every person on earth depends on shipping in some way, and making shipping indispensable. Shipping is international. So before any regulations can be applied, it must be adopted globally and then implemented globally or universally. So that is the main purpose or responsibility of the International Maritime Organization. And as you said, the International Maritime Organization, it is a UN specialized agency, as most of us will know. And it is responsible for the safety and security of shipping, as well as the protection of the environmental, marine and atmospheric pollution from ships. So that is the main job of the International Maritime Organization. But it's also to create legal frameworks or regulatory frameworks for shipping, which I said is international.
Yes.
And this regulatory framework must be effective and fair, must be agreed by all member states, and then implemented globally for smooth processes in shipping.
Right.
So with this in mind, the International Maritime Organization, taking into consideration that the exhaust being emitted into the atmosphere, shipping takes about 90% of the transport sector emissions into the atmosphere. And if you look at shipping as well, about 3.5 to 4% of the climate change emissions is coming from shipping, international shipping. And with this in mind, the primary gases are carbon dioxide from this climate change emissions from ships. So with this in mind, there was also research that if nothing is done between now and 2050, the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will increase to 250%. And taking into consideration these huge sums of pollution is coming from the ships, there has been initiatives whereby this amount of emissions from the ships would be minimized. So the International Maritime Organization, as I said, is responsible for creating a regulatory framework. So there was an initial IMO strategy for the reduction of emissions, greenhouse gas emissions from ships, with the intention to reduce the emission from ships to 50% by the year 2050. So this has been the initiative. But before this initial strategy was put in place, there has been a lot of works. You cannot just come and put a strategy without making studies and surveys and researches. So there were the intersectional working groups for greenhouse gas, which started a long time ago in 2008. And this group was tasked to come up with, to develop technical basis for the control mechanisms of ships. So that led to the IMO initial strategy for the greenhouse gas emissions. So there has been a lot going on. And recently there has been an amendment, which was passed in June by the MEPC, that is the Marine Environmental Protection Committee of the IMO. These are the bodies that are tasked to come up with solutions to environmental issues. You know, the IMO consists of a lot of member states. Ghana is a member of the IMO. And the IMO has subsidiary or committees which are tasked to do different things. So the MEPC is tasked to carry out environmental pollution issues. So in June, there was an amendment, which was a major one, to take a step in line with the IMO strategy, which was adopted in 2018, so that we could have the ships to conduct what we call the EEXI, which is the Energy Efficiency of Existing Ships Index, which is a technical issue based on certain parameters which have been set up for different types of ships and different categories of ships and different sizes of ships. So it is mandatory now for every ship to calculate the energy efficiency of that ship and then produce a report. And apart from that, the amendment also requires every ship to establish a carbon identification index, carbon indication index of every ship. You know, these ships, they have huge engines, and it is these ships that burn this to bring out these emissions into the atmosphere. So these two are key in the amendment that was passed in June. But I would just want to say that the amendments are coming to modernize or to put some kind of reforms to an initial procedure, which we call the EEDI, Efficiency Energy Design Index, for new ships. If you want to build a new ship, you go into the process of getting this efficiency, engine efficiency, the design index, before you can build that engine. And like a layman, you know what efficiency means. The output of the work from the machine, the ratio of that from what you have put inside. So the IMO's intention is that this EEXI, they make the ship be efficient. And if the engine is efficient, then the consumption of the fuel certainly is coming down. And that is why it is now made mandatory for every ship to determine this kind of
I'll come to you and find out whether the ships are really complying. But this initial submission of yours has elicited some follow-up questions, and I want us to chew on that. Now, first, you mentioned greenhouse gases. I mean, I wanted to break it down to the layman who is viewing, who is watching, and who is listening. And then I also want to break it down for us. You said 70% by volume and the 80% by volume and 70% by value. If you can also break that down for us, I would appreciate.
First of all, the greenhouse gases. Our world leaders pledged to support the SDGs, in 2015. And this is simply because we have so much pressures from the world regarding the climate change. And it has been determined that this climate change is due to the emission of certain gases into the atmosphere. And that they include carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and CFC, which has chlorofluorocarbons, and then we have ozone depletion substances. These are being emitted into the atmosphere. They radiate heat, and particularly with carbon, is tapped by the carbon and then reflected back. So we have a lot of global warming. And it's not only global warming that is associated with the climate change. We have ice melting in the north, in the polar regions. We have bushfires everywhere. So this is the reason why we're trying to come or put down or mitigate these emissions of greenhouse gases. And like I mentioned, the sulfur dioxide is being tackled. Carbon dioxide is being tackled by the IMO, particularly for shipping. And we have noxious substances, as well as the ozone depleting substance. We also have what we call the organic compounds, volatile organic compounds. And these ones are all part of the greenhouse gases.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
with the volume of the cargo
Yes.
that is being carried by ship,
yes.
If you talk about global trade, and we say 80% of the cargo by volume is carried by sea, the quantities. And if you talk about 70% of the value,
yes,
a very huge container may have very low value. So in volumes for value and in volumes for the quantities, that is the 80 and 70.
All right.
70 by volume, which means the quantity.
Okay.
70 by value.
Value, yeah, sure. All right. Again, you mentioned 250% carbon dioxide. And what does this mean for both human and aquatic life?
Really? Carbon dioxide emission, as I said, particularly CO2, is a major greenhouse gas that causes this climate change. And increasing from what we have now and crying about, everybody crying, and so many Paris agreements and everything. And now increasing this quantity to 250%.
Yeah.
I think the whole world will come to a stop.
Yeah.
So it's going to be disastrous. In 2050, if nothing is done, the percentage of carbon in the atmosphere, if we say it's 100% now and we are crying, it's going to increase to 250%.
That'll be terrible.
And as I mentioned, ships alone constitute or take 90% of exhaust gas emissions.
Yes.
So if we are able to do something with the ships from this kind of emission to bring it down, I think it will be a very good achievement. And that's why IMO, the strategy adopted in 2018, is to reduce the volume of cargo emitted by ships 50% by 2050, particularly carbon dioxide.
All right. Okay, so you mentioned that the IMO has made it compulsory for ships to comply with the EEXI and the EEDI. Yes. Are the ships complying?
It was passed in June. And the
June 2021?
June 2021 by MEPC. And the enforcement date is November 1, 2022 for the EEXI and the CII. Okay, so from now to 2022, November 1, ships are to prepare towards, and we need to take pragmatic measures to comply with that. So it's not yet enforced, but you need to prepare and then get towards that. And let me just mention that this is a step, a giant step to try to reduce the carbon emission into the atmosphere. But if after 2026, the IMO has put in a clause in the amendment to review the implementation of that amendment to see whether it is achieving what it's actually being planned for. But if there is no achievement, then there will be the room for adoption or further development. And there is also a clause to review the impact on states, countries, to see particularly the developing countries and the LCDs and the SIDS, to see whether it is affecting them negatively or there could be even a stricter measure. So it's still not enforced.
Right. So with efforts to get these ships to comply with this particular directive by the IMO, what does that translate to shipping? Does it mean increased cost in running these vessels?
There are some...
In their quest to comply with the directive, yeah.
The compliance, for instance, for the EEXI, Energy Efficiency of Existing Ships Index, is for only ships of 400 gross tonnage and above, not every ship. And for the CII, it is for ships of 5,000 gross tonnage and above. And certainly, if there is going to be an amendment to cut down on these emissions, it will have some kind of cost, implied cost. And, but I believe that in the long run, if your ship engine is efficient, you would even gain more economically.
Right.
So long as you initially have to do certain calculations and modify your engines, that will come with a cost. But if you continue with that, efficiency is what every person is looking for, particularly in the industry.
Yeah.
If your engines are efficient in the maritime industry, you come out with economic gains, certainly. That is, you put in low fuel, it combusts, and then you get efficient result.
Right.
You can even run more speed with an efficient engine.
Okay. Yeah. So, Captain, I know that in 2019, the IMO sought to implement this particular policy where ships were made to implement a sulfur cap of 0.50%. How far has it come with this initiative?
Well, with 0.5% MM means mass by mass, of the sulfur content in the heavy fuel oil of ships. It came in 1st January 2020 was the date of enforcement. But actually this started a long time ago in 2016 where studies were done on human life. The impact of sulfur dioxide on human life, and it was disastrous.
Yeah.
The results of the study show that if nothing is done, from 2020 to 2050, about the estimated about 570,000 premature deaths because of the effect of sulfur on human health. So that was how come there were deliberations and studies, and then we came up with the 0.5 content of sulfur in heavy fuel oil for ships. And it's been implemented, and there has been compliance in this aspect. So it is a very good initiative. And we thought that a lot of things in the shipping industry will come to a standstill, but we thank God that things went on well. And I believe this new initiative of the EEXI will also follow the same procedure, and it will be okay. And to talk about the sulfur, well, we all know the essence of the effects of sulfur dioxide on human life and the acid rain and the environment. It has, according to the medical research, it gives lung cancer and some heart diseases because some particles in particle matters from the exhaust of ship engines, when you breathe them through, then you have some lung issues. Then acid rain and so many other implications. So the 0.5 actually came into effect, and that is what ships are complying with now. There has been alternatives, but it's working on well.
Now, there are those who are of the school of thought that sulfur oxide is not only catastrophic to to aquatic life, but to human health as well. And they're wondering whether 0.50% is enough to ensure sustainable shipping.
Well, it's enough. At the beginning of this talk, I mentioned that the responsibility of the IMO is to create a regulatory framework that is fair and effective, globally adopted, universally applied. So the 0.5 did not just come just like a thought. It came with so many research and studies. So, and it was a bold step taken by the IMO. I say it's a bold step because global sulfur content of heavy fuel oil, which we call HFO, that is what the bunker of the ships is normally made of. They use HFO, which is the heavy fuel oil. It's a residue of crude oil when it's refined. So this has a lot of sulfur in it. So initially, the sulfur content of HFO for all ships was 3.5% M by M. For instance, if you have a mass of fuel, the content or the amount of sulfur in that fuel should weigh 3.5% of the total amount of that fuel that you have. So it was 3.5.
Right.
And now we have 0.5. So from 3.5 to 0.5 has been a significant and a drastic step, a reduction, which we all determined at the IMO that it was sufficient to achieve what we actually wanted. Yeah.
All right. I know there's this going green agenda, for the shipping industry, and I just want to find out whether it has to do only with environmental friendliness or there's some cost element attached to it as far as shipping is concerned.
Well, yes. With the green shipping, my first question was, what is sustainable shipping? Green shipping actually is a path to zero emission. Yeah? And sustainability, like I mentioned, has some components of logistics, technical, and market-based components.
Right.
So you need to take all this into consideration. But with a 0.5 sulfur content in the heavy fuel oil, there were options given to the ship operator or the ship owner. You either buy a fuel which has 0.5 sulfur content in it, or you put in what we call exhaust gas cleaning system, which we call the EGS. You either buy heavy fuel with 0.5 sulfur content, or you fit in exhaust gas cleaning system, which we call the scrubbers. These were alternatives. And this is the exhaust gas. It's in the Marpol Convention, Regulation 4.1 or so. And the other one was to use LNG, liquefied natural gas, which is in the infant stages now, because we don't have even bunkers for that. And it needs a lot of modification of the engine before you can use LNG to propel your engines.
Right.
So with a heavy fuel, if you buy fuel with 0.5, it's very expensive. They need to do blending so that they can reduce the amount of sulfur, and it's a lot of money. Yeah. So heavy fuel with 0.5 is very expensive. So certainly there's a cost implication. And when you come to the scrubbers too, that is the exhaust gas cleaning system. The estimate of fitting a scrubber on board the ship engines is about 5 to 10 million. So it really has an economic effect on that, a cost on that. So it's not only for environment, but it has some cost implication, fixed costs, and then operational cost implication. No, the fixed costs may not be considered here. The fixed cost is the money you pay when you are buying the ship.
Right.
But this is retrofitting of exhaust gas into the main engine. So that one is part of the operational, that could be part of the operational cost. And it's very expensive. So certainly it had cost implication. So with the introduction of that, we're thinking maybe the ship owners or operators, considering the effect of this on all human beings, may try to absorb that.
Yeah.
But it was not so easy. So it was somehow transferred. And now it's gone even. So things have changed since 1st January 2020 till now.
Right.
I think it's going on well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very well. So this is Iron Port here on Metropolitan Television, and tonight we are discussing sustainable shipping. With me in the studios is Captain Inus Abdul Nasir. He is the Director, Technical Services Division, Ghana Maritime Authority. We'll be back shortly.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory
and my warehouse. Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse, and my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance Motor Policy. My goods are on the high seas, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the project, and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goil Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goil Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goil Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goil Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Electricity, pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water, or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
All right, so you're welcome back. I will move straight once again to Captain Inus Abdul Nasir. Like I said, he's the Director, Technical Services Division, Ghana Maritime Authority. And tonight we are discussing sustainable shipping. And we are placing premium and emphasis on carbon emissions. And we're talking about pollution. And we're talking about how we can all help to ensure clean and sustainable shipping. And I just want to find out from you, Captain, whether you mentioned some of the measures that the IMO has taken and ensuring that people, or directing that people should enforce these laws, ships should adhere to some of these regulations and laws. I want to find out whether we have been able to localize, or so to speak, domesticate these directives in Ghana. And what role does the IMO have, does the Ghana Maritime Authority have to play in all of this? And whether we are also implementing the sulfur cap, as it were, of 0.50.
Yeah, very well, and thank you so much for that question. With the amendments and new regulations, particularly the sulfur cap that came 1 January 2020, the responsibility was on national administrations of parties or of states who are parties to the MARPOL and X6. Strange enough, we've been talking about all this, but we did not talk about MARPOL. MARPOL is the main convention, international convention for the prevention of maritime pollution from ships, maritime and atmospheric pollution from ships. So if you are a party to MARPOL, particularly Annex 6, then your administration is responsible to implement all the regulation, the provisions of the regulation. And I would want to say that the Ghana Maritime Authority is the national maritime authority here in Ghana, and we completely or to a larger extent replicate the functions of the IMO. IMO is international and Ghana Maritime Authority is the local one. So if you have a convention, then the provisions of the convention, if you ratify that convention, then you domesticate it and then you implement it. So compliance, enforcement, and monitoring of all IMO regulations is the responsibility of the Ghana Maritime Authority. And with the sulfur cap, as you said, before it came into being, there has been a lot of sensitization, seminars with the Ghana Shippers, stakeholders, Ghana Shippers Authority, and then we implemented it. So we are carrying it out, and it's a priority to Ghana Maritime Authority. We do that through what we call port state control. Port state control and flag state implementation. So the port state control, we ensure that every ship coming into the country, into our ports, comply with the international conventions that are related to that type of ship. Okay, so we carry out port state control. And for the sulfur cap, we've done a lot. The main action points when port state control is you go on the ship to ensure that they comply.
Right.
So with the sulfur cap, as you mentioned, we go on board, our inspectors go on board, and there are two key things that they need to check. What we call the bunker delivery note. It shows where you get a bunker. Bunker is the fuel that the ship burns.
Yes.
Just like the car burning petrol.
Petrol, yeah.
The ship burns heavy fuel or diesel, or we call it bunker. So a bunker delivery note will show the quantity of the fuel you received, where you got it, the quantity or the composition of the sulfur content in that, and so many other requirements as stipulated in the provisions of the convention. So you check that. And this is what you need to find out whether the ship is compliant with this. The second aspect is what we call sampling. The bunker sample, we have the bunker sample which every master or chief engineer must take, and then it's sealed and labeled. So you can test this to find out the sulfur content in that particular bunker that you received, in that sample. And because of this, the Ghana Maritime Authority has purchased equipment so that you can easily test the samples to determine the quantity of sulfur in that heavy oil. And I would like to say that initially I mentioned about alternatives. Either you buy fuel with 0.5 mass of sulfur quantity, or you continue with the old type with the excessive amount of sulfur, but you have an exhaust gas cleaning system. It's a system that when you burn it, treats it, and the exhaust comes out with less sulfur dioxide. So you can use that. So recently, we found out about some kind of misoperations where you have the exhaust gas cleaning system operating on what we call open loop in the port. It's a system that when you are burning the heavy fuel with high quantity of sulfur, the machine will treat it and the exhaust is coming out with less sulfur. But with open, this system pumps the residues into the water. And this is not a very good thing to do in the port. You can do it at open sea where we have the concentration will be low. So we issued a maritime circular, and it was in the international news that Ghana is banning open loop scrubber system in the ports. So it was a very good step that we took. And ship owners and operators coming into the ports of Ghana, they take this into consideration, and it's been observed. So these are some of the things that we do. And it is actually effective. And we continue to do that. And we don't only go on the ships to check for sulfur. We conduct inspections, as I said, to ensure that this ship coming into our port complies with the provisions of all the IMO conventions. Yeah.
Right. So have you taken time to measure our level of success as far as our quest to implement these directives are concerned? How successful have we been?
Successful in ensuring the compliance.
You just mentioned in the latter part of your recent submission that it has been quite effective, which means that there's some element of success. Yes, and I'm finding whether you've taken time, the GMA has taken time to measure our level of success as far as our quest to implement these directives are concerned.
Yeah, our level of success. For instance, when we detected the open loop system, which was not good, and we said it was polluting our waters. Some people call it an emission cheat, trying to convert or minimize the air pollution and rather put it in the waters. So we quickly issued a maritime circular banning this kind of systems in here.
Right.
So that has been a very good thing. But as we go on to do these checks, like measuring the quantity of sulfur content in the fuel oil, we haven't got so much discrepancies. So we believe that it's going on well. And if a ship is having that, she might not even come in here. So I think that is why I say it has been effective.
Right. Okay, so I know that 2019-2020 was a brutal year for the maritime industry, for the shipping industry globally. And I just want to find out from you whether in Ghana, this pandemic in any way impacted our quest to, implement some of these directives.
Pandemic?
Yes.
The COVID?
Yes.
Okay, yes. To some extent, yes, but not to a very large extent. Globally, seafarers and port operators and, our inspectors were designated as essential workers. Yeah, so with this, and the government taking this into consideration, issued us with exemption passes that we could come out even during the lockdowns to go and carry out inspections. So inspections were being carried out, but we're only taking into consideration the protocols that have been set down so that you will observe that and go to carry out your duties. So we were carrying out with the collaboration of the Ghana Ports and Harbours authorities, particularly with the crew changes. We did a lot of crew changes with the Ghana Ports and Harbours authority. So we were actually carrying out our duties during this pandemic, and it wasn't so a bad thing.
Right. I know you don't work in isolation as Ghana Maritime Authority. You just mentioned your collaboration with the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, and all that. And I know you also perhaps work with some shipyards, ship owners, ship operators, and so on, some refineries and all that. What's the level of collaboration with these people to ensure compliance?
With this, the compliance, if you take the shipyards, for instance, the compliance is that a ship calling at a shipyard for docking or ship repairs, we go to, enforce or monitor to see whether the vessel is. It's just the same thing as the port. But before, and I continue to say, it's not only the sulfur cap issue. Before any regulation is passed or an amendment is made, we carry out sensitization. We carry out meetings and then awareness creation. And particularly in the Ghana Shipping Act, as amended, it's sections 479A, mandates the Ghana Maritime Authority to issue out maritime circulars with respect to safety, security, and maritime pollution. So we do this as part of the sensitization and notification to mariners. And we have meetings with the Ghana Ports and Harbours authorities, and particularly with the ship Owners and Agents Association, because they represent the ship operators, the ship owners, and the agents that deal with that. So there has been, because of this pandemic, most of these meetings have been virtual. And I recall the last meeting we had with the ship owners and agents was by virtual, and it was good. Right. And we collaborate with NPA, National Port and Harbours, Petroleum Authority, and the refineries are actually under the petroleum sector. So they go along with that. But whenever we have a meeting with the NPA, they have, certain representatives from those sectors to join. Yeah. Okay. So there has been a lot of collaboration, and I appreciate that, particularly with the Ghana Shippers Authority during the sensitization. Yeah. Because there was a lot of thought that the cost implication will be shifted to freight and other things. Right. And the people involved are the freight forwarders, the shippers, which, the Ghana Shippers Authority protect their interests. Yeah. So there was a lot of collaboration. We went to the port cities to carry out sensitization. So we have been working in collaboration with them, particularly with the sulfur cap issue. Okay. Yeah, still with the sulfur cap issue, is this particular policy of the IMO binding, and are there punitive measures or sanctions against non-compliant or intransigent vessels? Yeah. Well, with the sulfur cap in particular, any vessel using HFO, heavy fuel oil, must comply. It's mandatory to that. And in the MAPO, certain sections measure, or they mention the category of vessels and the size. Conventional vessels are 500 gross tonnage and beyond, but MAPO brings it down even to 400 gross tonnage. So it is mandatory to all of these ships that carry heavy fuel oil. Right. But if they are only running on diesel oil, the sulfur content is not even up to 0.1. Yeah. So we don't, so it's not applicable to them. It's only for HFO and any fuel that has a content of sulfur more than 0.5. Yeah. But talking about punitive measures, the MAPL Convention actually, and not only the MAPL Convention, conventions that are ratified, no, they are adopted, ratified, and applied universally. These kind of conventions do not put in punitive measures. But for MAPL, with regards to MAPL, Article 4 of the MAPL Convention strictly prohibits non-compliance. It strictly prohibits non-compliance. But it puts the responsibility on the member state or the administration where the ship is flying to put in penalties in their local laws. So, and as I mentioned before, a convention comes, you ratify, then you domesticate the provisions into the the local law. And that is where you put in the penalties. Right. And again, that particular article of MAPL that restricts non-compliance says the national authority must institute severe penalties, which is enough as a deterrent. So this is how penalties are being issued. All right. Okay, so your messages are coming in thick and fast. I'll be taking them shortly, but my producer tells me I can activate phone lines now for you to call in. The number to call or dial is 0552 020-552-8353. 020-552-8353. You can call and then you can call and then ask whatever question you will have to ask and also contribute to the discussion. I'll be taking the messages shortly, but let me come to you, Captain. You mentioned your collaboration with the NPA, that's the National Petroleum Authority, when it comes to fuels. And I just want to find out from you whether Ghana's petroleum industry has demonstrated some level of capacity
to be able to produce or to, supply, as it were, compliant fuels to vessels that call the country?
Very well. I'm so much glad to say that enough has been done by the National Petroleum Authority. The Minister of Energy, when this amendment was to come into force, certainly it would target producers of bunker oil, bunker fuel for ships. So quickly there was a meeting, and then in the meeting we split into two, and there were one section was a technical committee, and this other sector was regulatory committee. So meetings were held with these subcommittees to come up with recommendations as to how we can go about with this without having shortage in the fuel, and without having discrepancies, and without having fuel that are still having high quantities of sulfur. So the technical committee that was set up came up with recommendations, and that went up to the refineries and giving them guidance and advice on what should be done.
Right.
And I was chairing the regulatory committee, and we came up with our recommendations.
Okay.
And Ghana Shippers Authority, Standards Authority was also part of it.
All right.
And then we came out with very good recommendations.
Okay. Let me go on to the phone lines now and welcome Abdul Razak from Tamale. Good evening, sir. Abdul Razak, good evening, sir. Okay, I understand he's gone off. Let me take this message. This one says, a good step towards sustainable shipping. However, still a long road to travel. Before all ships are truly emission-free, sustainable shipping starts with finding solutions that allow companies to forecast demand, looking for the right technologies and training staff on how to use them, and evaluating shipping methods. This one is from Miftau in Tamale. Do you agree?
Well, I do agree. We still have a long way, we still have some way to go. But even the longest distance on earth starts with a step.
Right.
So certainly you need to have to start. But there are certain things that we, with the administration, do, like workshop for capacity building, for the mitigation of greenhouse gases and other things. It's been ongoing. Ghana hosted the EEDI workshop, and we hosted the MTCC, the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center.
Right.
Certainly. And that is why any amendment coming, particularly the EEXI, has a clause in the amendment. After some time, we're going to review and see the impact, particularly on developing countries, and see how it is going, whether we need to relax or we further develop or adopt some
new measures.
measures.
Okay. Right, this one says, what amount of sulfur content is considered acceptable in diesel?
In diesel?
Yes. Before you take that, let me go on to the phone lines and then welcome Derek. Terry, good evening, sir.
Evening.
Yeah, you are calling us from Kaswa. Good to hear from you. Please flow.
Okay. I want to say that.
Yes, Terry. Oh, I think we're having challenges with it. I understand he's also gone off. He couldn't stand. So let's take a look at that particular one.
Yeah.
This one says, what amount of sulfur content is considered acceptable in diesel?
Well, whether it is in diesel, excuse me to say, or even in water, it must be 0.5.
Okay.
Yes, it must be 0.5. But we have some areas we call SECAs, sulfur emission control areas, which is 0.1. Whether it is in diesel or it is in heavy oil, the quantity must be as specified.
Right.
I told you globally, initially it was 3.5, wherever it is in the fuel.
Right.
It must not be more than. And now here it must not be more than 0.5.
Okay.
Which is, if it is less, then it's acceptable, but it must not be more than.
All right. This one says, good evening. Can you find out from Captain Inusa what are Ghana's efforts to leverage LNG, as it seems that's the direction globally?
Very well. With LNG, as I mentioned earlier in the submission, it's still in the infant state.
Right.
Yeah. And it actually involves complete modification of the engine. I've been privileged to sail on vessels in the States that have LNG,
right,
just to see how it operates. And they are beautiful, but it's very expensive.
Right.
And some of the recommendations that were given during the subcommittees that we formed for the petroleum industry was to try and see how we could get this LNG. It's still in the infant state. And actually, it's complex. But with time and hope,
right,
our refineries and other things will look into that and give us LNG as a bunker.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so this one says, what happens to non-compliant vessels during port state control?
Non-compliant vessels, we have punitive actions, as I said. And as I said, it's not only the sulfur cap that we are looking out for, non-compliance. In any convention that the ship is supposed to comply with. With port state control, it is not for the authority to charge. You put a ship right, the best thing you can do to that is to, if it is a detainable non-compliant, you keep the ship till they rectify that. That is port state control. You don't charge. But if you are going back to see whether this thing has been done, that is where you can institute a charge.
Right.
But for pollution, we at the administration, we don't determine this as port state control, but MARPOL violation. And as I mentioned, that Article 4 of MARPOL says the administrations should institute or shall institute penalties that are severe to discourage. So we have penalties that we give in MARPOL violations, but not port state control.
Yeah. All right. This one says, hello, I am Port. My name is Isaac from Sawam. Thank you for the educative program. Kindly ask your guest if there are punitive measures to vessels who do not comply with the IMO's sustainable shipping measures. I think you've dealt with that, but maybe for his sake, you would want to go over it again.
Okay. With non-compliance, particularly MARPOL, we have MARPOL violations, and we have for every annex, we have if you violate. And that is a serious case. That's why we separated it. For MARPOL, if you pollute our waters, it's serious.
Yeah.
So there are fines assigned to each with the sections that we have, with the annexes that we have in MARPOL. But like I said earlier, as for port state control, we do not charge. We are more particular with the MARPOL violations. And we have been in the international circles for instituting these strict measures in our waters.
Right. Okay, so still on port state control, you mentioned the fact that when the vessels arrive, your men go onto them to check whether they are really doing the right things, whether the fuel and everything is the right, with the right sulfur content and all that. Have there been instances where you find some who are intransigent, and what do you do when you find such? Have there been instances where you go on vessels and realize that, okay, this particular vessel is not using the right, sulfur content, or maybe there's something that the vessel has not done to comply with this particular directive? What do you do?
As I mentioned, with port state control, we look out for non-compliance or violations, and with port state control, we have detainable defects.
So have you ever detained a vessel because of this?
Okay. Oh, yes. And when you detain a vessel, you only notify them to rectify that deficiency.
Before they set sail again?
Before they set sail. And you give it to the the harbour master where the vessel is. If it is in Takoradi, you give it to, then you give to the ship owner. And then we give to the customs and other
agencies.
But there are other deficiencies that you've seen that is a deficiency, but that cannot prevent the ship from sailing. So you give that ship some time to rectify. And when they rectify, they report back. So for port state control, we do not fine vessels when we find deficiencies. It's just to bring it to make sure that they operate in according to the provisions of the conventions. But I mention again that MAPOL, polluting the water is a serious thing. It has so many implications. So that is where we have the fine. And the fine comes from, as I mentioned, you transpose the provisions of the convention into a local. So for MAPOL, we have transposed it into an act called the Maritime Pollution Act, which is Act 932. And in that act, you have various penalties if you violate.
All right, so we'll be wrapping up shortly, but I just want to find out from you how pervasive this particular trend of pollution is globally. Can you give us a sense of how it is, how serious this particular canker is?
If you talk about pollution, maritime pollution or atmospheric pollution, all is under the remit of the International Maritime Organization.
Yes.
Pollute, we have been to very many ports globally. In a drop of oil, for instance, in a port like Australia, it's serious. So there are certain countries, or the ports of certain countries, that you cannot attempt to do anything.
Hold it. I'll come back and you continue from there. But I have to welcome Ebenezer from Takoradi onto the phone lines, onto the show. Good evening, Eben.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you very much indeed for calling in. Please flow.
Okay. Please, I want to ask something. Do you have, like, occupation, those that we studied at Maritime, do you have occupation for us, like working in the shipping?
Come again, please. We didn't get your question.
Like, yeah, those that we have certificates for maritime.
Certificates for maritime?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have work for us on board?
Okay. He's asking, he has a certificate from maybe Regional Maritime University. He's completed it. He says, do you have vacancies for them on board vessels? I think basically that's what his question is about.
Okay, that's seafarer employment.
Yes.
And thank you for that question. Recently, there was the World Maritime Day where seafarers were celebrated.
Yes.
And you could see in the papers as well that how Ghana is trying to promote employment for seafarers. So it's in the pipeline, but we have, opportunities, and we have agents who are duly registered with the Ghana Maritime Authority, and that is their aspect. If you call to an agency and there's a vacancy on any vessel, you can be given the opportunity. But the other thing is that the Maritime Authority is trying to see how we can promote employment of seafarers on board vessels. And that could be internationally, not only locally. So there are MOUs that you sign with other countries, and we had a strategic sector cooperation with Denmark.
Right.
And that something like that started before, but it hasn't materialized yet. So the authority is working for that. And it depends on what certificate you have. So there are categories of certificates. Certificate of competency or just mandatory, certificate for life-saving. So when you get to the right agent who gives contract for people on board ships, you can find out whether there's an opportunity.
All right, so what's your assessment of our performance as an industry in Ghana? Better still, how would you rate our industry in terms of performance?
Our industry, talking about the maritime industry, we are doing very well. To me, we are doing very well. Not because I work with the Maritime Authority, but globally, we are reckoned. Because I remember we had a problem with registration of a vessel, If you want to register a vessel to fly your flag, you need to go into what we call initial survey. to see to it that that vessel is really capable, like roadworthy. See whether she's seaworthy before you can accept her. So there was a case of a vessel that came from Togo, trying to register here. And we went into the surveys, and the owner said, no, I better go back to Togo. These things are not checked there, so he said he will go back there. He even made a remark which I was very surprised. He said, you think you are an European port? So we actually play to the rules. We go by the provisions of the conventions, and we have been recognized. That is why when we put in a circular, it's always in the international maritime circles.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Just in 1 minute, tell me about the VTMIs. What's the state now? That's the Vessel Tracking, Monitoring, and Information System. Yes. Just briefly, in 1 minute. And
in 1 minute.
Yes.
VTMIs is an extensive, coverage system. You cannot use 1 minute to talk about VTMIs, but it is a system that detects operations on the sea. Before VTMIs, we were blind. We call that sea blindness. You don't see anything. But with the VTMIs, you sit in the control room, which is in
whatever is happening.
You see whatever is happening in the, and we have remote sensitized covering the entire coast of Ghana, from Keta to Hafasini. So we can see and up to 200 nautical miles.
Right.
But it's very expensive.
Absolutely.
And actually, we have problems with it, and it is undergoing maintenance now. But it's a very good system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Captain Inusa Abdul Nasir is the Director, Technical Services Division, Ghana Maritime Authority. And tonight we've been discussing sustainable shipping, carbon emissions, pollution, how to ensure safe, green, and sustainable shipping globally, and what Ghana has done so far in its quest to implement IMO directives that are geared towards ensuring safe and sustainable shipping. God willing, next week we shall come your way again with another edition of Iron Port. Remember, the abridged version of the show is aired on Ghana Television every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Thanks to our sponsors, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Goyle Company Limited, Serene Insurance. We also have Ghana Link Network Services, the operators of the Integrated Customs Management System. My name is Kennedy Mona. Thank you very much indeed, Captain, for showing up. We are grateful to you, and God willing, next week we will see you. Have a super week ahead.
Thank you.